The vastly increased gallery space ensuring more of this collection can be seen than ever before.
Okay, good evening everybody. Thank you for attending the Planning Committee on Tuesday the 29th of March 2022. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Councillor Alex Hilton. I am the Vice Chair of this committee and I will be acting as the Chair this evening in the absence of Councillor June Molyneux. Before we start the usual proceedings, I'm sure that you will all join me in expressing sadness that we've learned this week that a former Mayor of Chorley and a councillor for many years, Councillor Florence Molyneux, sadly passed away this week. She was a councillor for many years, so what I'd like to do, first of all, in respect to Florence and to the chair of this committee, is to be upstanding in a minute's silence for Florence and for June. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Please be seated. Okay. Right. Okay, so please note that this committee is going to be streamed live on YouTube. If you're a member of the public that is registered to speak, you'll have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or in the middle of making a point, wind up the point in the next few seconds and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone may be muted. For ease, a pack has been prepared which contains the report, plans and presentations and slides for each item to ensure that everyone can easily follow the agenda. This has been available online. After officers have presented the report, any speakers have made their representations. I will then invite members to make their comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand to indicate to me that you wish to speak. When I invite you to speak, please turn on your microphone. Please turn your microphone off when you have finished speaking. When speaking, ideally, please reference the paragraph number to enable everyone to follow you. If you wish to make a proposal, please make it clear that you are making a proposal. If the technology fails, I will adjourn the meeting for a few minutes and try to resolve the issue. If this isn't possible, a new date and time will be organised. So item 1, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillor Molyneux with Councillor James Nevitt as substitute.
Thank you, Matthew. So minutes of the meeting of the Tuesday, 1st of March 2022. Could I have a proposer for those minutes? Councillor Wheelton, thank you. Seconder, Councillor France, thank you very much. Okay, so item 2, declarations of any interest. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'll just invite Taz to come in there.
Sorry, Chair. I think it's just a matter of actually voting. So you've had a proposer and a seconder. It's a matter of actually getting the rest of the committee to actually vote to approve those minutes.
Yeah, sorry, completely correct. Sorry, it's my first time sharing this meeting, so apologies for that. So yeah, can we vote on the minutes, please? Okay, thank you. Sorry, Taz. Right, I'll try not to race ahead too much. Item 2, declarations of any interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in matters, in respect to matters contained in the agenda. If you have a pecuniary interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed. You do, however, have the same right to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Do I have any declarations of interest? Councillor Gabbett.
Sorry, Chair, I just noticed the applicant on the new build of the self-build eco home. They have personal interest to declare. I didn't know the applicant, but I just want it on record, that's all, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gabbett. Okay. Right, item 3, planning applications to be determined. The Director of Planning and Development has submitted 5 items for planning applications to be determined. Plans to be considered will be displayed at the meeting and viewed in advance and should be available in your agenda packs. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements of planning are as follows. The officers will summarise the report. Registered speakers will then be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor and the applicant or their agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against the application, as chair, I will grant the applicant and his or her representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. Okay, so item 3, planning applications to be determined. Item 3A, I believe Councillor Bradley is on a train on the way back from London, so I'm going to take that last on the agenda. Therefore, I'm going to move straight on to item 3B. This is land 120 metres east of 27 Charter Lane, Charnock, Richard. There's an update on your addendum. The recommendation remains the same. Adele will present this item. And the officer recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and a section 106 legal agreement. The registered speakers I have an objector, Colette Jolly, parish councillor Lucy Watson and agent Sarah Jones. Adele, can you please present the report?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. This application site is located on the western edge of Charnock Richard on Charter Lane within the settlement boundary and extends to approximately 2 hectares of mostly flat, undeveloped grassland. There are several mature trees along the site boundaries, particularly to the north and south. The application seeks planning permission for 76 affordable dwellings, along with other infrastructure such as a vehicular site access, parking, landscaping and surface water pumping station. Members will note from the report that there have been 198 representations received in objection to the proposal, including from Charnock Richard Parish Council, on the grounds that include harm to highway safety, residential amenity, the principle of developing the site for the proposed level of housing, lack of local infrastructure and amenities, ecological harm and flood risk. Further details of these objections are provided in detail within the report. There are no outstanding objections from any technical consultees, and members are advised that protracted negotiations have taken place between the applicant and Lancashire County Council as the local highway authority to agree to a suite of mitigation measures for the proposal. Again, full details are provided in the committee report, and the measures include the provision of funds for improvements to local bus service, the implementation of a travel plan, relocating and enhancing existing bus stops, street lighting upgrades, and the provision of a 2-metre wide footway to the site frontage. As the site is located within the settlement area for Charnock Richard, policy V12 of the Chorley local plan is applicable, which members will be aware identifies a presumption in favour of appropriate sustainable development subject to material planning considerations and other policies and proposals within the plan. The main policies for the determination of this application are, however, policies 1 and 4 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy. Members will be mindful that a previous application was refused planning permission on a larger site that included the application site in 2017 and was for 60 dwellings and a shop, mainly due to conflict with Policy 1 of the Core Strategy. Members will also be aware that Policy 1 provides a development plan strategy for the area, setting out the locations for growth and investment across central Lancashire. Charnock Richard is not identified as a rural local service centre, therefore criterion F of Policy 1 is applicable. Under this criterion, development will typically be small scale and limited to appropriate infilling, conversion of buildings and proposals to meet local need, unless there are exceptional reasons for larger scale redevelopment schemes. The previously refused proposal and this current proposal therefore conflict with this policy. However, it must be noted by this committee that at the time of the previous refusal, the council was able to demonstrate an adequate supply of housing, and this is not now the case. Policy 4 of the core strategy sets out the minimum housing requirements for the plan area, and as set out in length in the committee report, recent planning appeal decisions in the borough have demonstrated that the council does not currently have a 5-year deliverable supply of housing. Policy 4 of the core strategy is therefore out of date. The National Planning Policy Framework is clear that where policies which are most important for determining the application are out of date, planning permission must be granted unless either the application of policies in the framework that protect areas or assets of particular importance provides a clear reason for refusing the development, or any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in the framework taken as a whole. This is known as the tilted balance. Policy 1 of the core strategy, which sets out the settlement strategy for the area, is not considered to be out of date, however. That said, the council cannot demonstrate an adequate supply of housing and the shortfall is significant. Policy 1 of the core strategy therefore forms part of a strategy which is failing to deliver a sufficient level of housing. As such, the policy should only be afforded moderate weight in the planning balance. This approach is consistent with other appeal decisions and indeed recent case law. In terms of ecology, the site is mostly dominated by relatively species-poor agricultural grassland. However, there are some habitats of local value present, including a pond, hedgerows, trees and ditches. These habitats will support birds, small mammals and amphibians. The applicant has revised the proposal since its original submission to retain more hedgerow and plant more trees, and whilst the proposal would still lead to a slight net loss in local biodiversity, there is currently no statutory requirement to provide a net gain in biodiversity until the contents of the Environment Act of 2021 are transposed into planning law. The loss is not considered to be significant in any way, and as such the proposal is considered to be acceptable in this regard. With regard to residential amenity, the proposal has been revised since the original submission to change the orientation and layout of one of the 2 apartment blocks to avoid a loss of privacy to occupants of existing dwellings on Leeson Avenue. All interface distances between the existing surrounding dwellings and the proposed dwellings are greater than the council's minimum guideline distances and therefore are considered acceptable. The adverse impacts of the development relate primarily to its conflict with development plan strategy for the area, borne out through Policy 1 of the core strategy. Charnock Richard is not a settlement earmarked for significant development, and the framework indicates that the planning system should be genuinely plan-led. There would also be some limited harm to the biodiversity of the area through a net loss of biodiversity value. In terms of benefits, the provision of new housing would bring construction and supply chain jobs, places for the economically active to live, increased local spend and a greater choice in the local market. These benefits are considerable. A relatively large number of affordable homes are to be provided in Charnock Richard by this proposal, and whilst there would not appear to be a need for these in the immediate area, there is a significant shortfall across the borough as a whole. It is clear, therefore, that the proposal would boost the supply of housing in a situation where there is no 5-year housing land supply and an under-provision of affordable housing. As a result, moderate weight can be given to the economic benefits, while significant weight can be given to the social benefits in the planning balance, where the tilted balance has already been engaged. Although Charnock Richard has limited facilities reflecting its lowly position in the settlement hierarchy, there are amenities within walking distance. Charter Lane is also served by public transport with bus stops along Chorley Lane. The nearest supermarkets are a Tesco Extra at Foxhole Road in Chorley, which is approximately 2.5 kilometres to the north-east, and a co-op at Spenmore Lane, Coppull, which is approximately 1.5 kilometres to the south. The site is also situated approximately 5 kilometres to the southwest of Chorley Town Centre. Whilst a private vehicle would likely be used for most journeys, alternatives exist and journeys to access services would not be long. The proposal includes enhancements to sustainable transport options as well. In summary, there is conflict with Policy 1 of the core strategy and the development plan overall, although the site is located within the defined settlement boundary. In terms of Policy 1, the overall strategy is consistent with the framework in concentrating development in the most sustainable locations. That said, the policy forms part of a failing strategy as the Council cannot demonstrate an adequate supply of housing. As such, the policy itself is only afforded moderate weight in the planning balance. Whilst it is acknowledged that there would be some adverse impacts from the proposed development relating to the conflict with the development strategy and loss in biodiversity, these would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the considerable economic and significant social benefits. As such, it is recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement to secure the affordable housing and financial contributions for the travel plan, improvements to bus services, public open space and additional secondary school places. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adele. So, Colette, can I invite you to make your representations, please? You can stand. The microphone might not hear you that well if you stand, but as long as we can hear you, it doesn't matter to me. All right.
Okay, thank you. Members may recall that the most recent planning application for this site, which was for fewer dwellings on more than twice the land, was unanimously rejected by the committee on the basis that the site was not sustainable for a development of such a size and scale. The current application was also originally recommended for refusal by Chorley Council last April on the grounds that it is not considered small scale and that it is not a sustainable location due to a lack of access to basic local services for residents. The site was not sustainable then and it is not sustainable now, and the development would have a significant and demonstrable detrimental impact on the village, far outweighing the limited benefits. Charnock Richard has a very limited range of services and facilities and is not in a location that is now or is likely to be served by multiple sustainable transport modes. There's no convenience store, no GP surgery, no chemist, and is and will remain poorly serviced by limited public transport. The nearest accessible convenience store is Tesco, almost 5 kilometres away. The nearest GP surgery is in Coppull, over 3 kilometres away, is oversubscribed and is not served by a bus route from Charnock. A car would be required to access even the most basic of services. I find myself at odds with the traffic assessments as well as the applicant's own assessment, which was undertaken during the summer holidays. These are out of date and are not a true representation of the real traffic or congestion issues. Traffic congestion on Charter Lane has increased substantially over the years, mainly from the oversubscribed school and increasingly successful football club. The number of trips out of the village from 76 dwellings with potentially 360 new residents, including approximately 200 children, to access services such as convenience stores, chemists, children's centres, doctors and schools, particularly given the lack of capacity at local school and across the area, would be substantial. It would result in significant environmental harm from greenhouse gas emissions, impacting the air quality, as well as posing a significant and real risk to the safety of pedestrians. The development effectively promotes the use of unsustainable modes of transport, and I cannot believe that further increasing traffic volumes and congestion on Charter Lane, an already narrow and congested road, which has limited sight lines at both ends, would seriously impair the ability of emergency vehicles from attending emergency, is considered safe or at least worthy of risking a serious accident, if not a fatality. I accept that there is a significant shortfall of homes, including social housing across the Chorley Borough, and I also agree that this development would provide real homes for real people, but this would be at the expense of sustainability. These real people need real homes with real access to basic services and real alternative modes of transport. Charnock Richard is unable to offer these. What is sustainable about encouraging increased traffic to access services and exacerbating the risk of harm to our children? At what price should the real safety of real people succumb to house building? The development of 76 dwellings is disproportionate to the size of the village. The already overstretched sewers, drainage systems, roads and digital telecom services struggle to support the existing residents, with flooding and intermittent digital connectivity being a regular occurrence. Residents recognise that this site will be developed on a small scale at some point in the future for housing. However, this particular proposal is a wrong development in the wrong place and at the wrong time. It is not so small scale, it is unsustainable, out of proportion and significantly detrimental to the village. I therefore ask the Planning Committee to do what is right and refuse this planning application.
Okay, thank you, Colette. Lucy, I'd like to invite you to make your representations now, please. Lucy Watson. Is that yours?
That one, the red one.
It's okay, just press the button so that the red light comes on.
Good evening, my name is Lucy Watson and I am presenting on behalf of Charnock Richard Parish Council. Before we start, I would like to thank the Chair for allowing me to speak and also the committee for listening to our points. The Parish Council strongly objected to this proposal and are extremely concerned about the number of proposed dwellings. Planning Policy 1F of the core strategy only allows for small development or infill development in Charnock Richard. Under this criterion, the proposed development would be to the contrary, and there are no exceptional circumstances being justified. The Parish Council believes that a full public consultation should have been undertaken prior to submission. Previous applications for less properties, whilst allowing for amenities and infrastructure provisions, were refused on this site, and this very application was also recommended for refusal in April 21. Quoting, "The site is not considered a sustainable location for this amount of development because Charnock Richard does not provide basic services for residents and development here could generate trips to access off-site services. It's estimated in excess of 360 vehicular movements per day would be triggered as a result of this development. And the already overwhelmed services could not support this scale of development and would detrimentally affect the already struggling village. The 2017 application had conditions to include a 2-metre footway on the west and full length of Charter Lane, a mitigating measure in the Section 278 agreement, yet the requirement has been omitted in this application. So why now? Why is it considered a mechanism to ensure the safety of pedestrians? My question is simply, what has changed? Were the planning officers wrong last time, or are they wrong this time? There are certainly no more GP surgeries, no shops, limited bus routes, and school places are overwhelmed. In summary, the previous application was deemed outside of policy boundaries, as Charnock Richard is for small development and infill only, so surely this must also be outside of those boundaries. Regardless of the type of housing, this site is still an unsustainable location. The planning system should support the transition to low-carbon future. It should help shape places in ways that contribute to reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and minimising vulnerability. Sustainable development is development that meets the need of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. To ignore local planning policy would make a mockery of planning policies and would open the floodgates for other applications. I simply ask that you are not afraid of refusing this application based on the appeal results of other areas and that you carefully consider all information before making your informed decisions. Thank you all for your time.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So, Sarah Jones. Sarah, would you like to make your representations? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and many thanks for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm representing Connon Holdings, the applicant and landowner, who are a local developer and employer. As you're aware, the application is for 100% affordable housing that will be located within the settlement boundary of Charnock Richard and not result in encroachment into the open countryside or greenbelt. The planning application was submitted in March last year and has been subject to extensive negotiations with your officers, Lancs County Highways and statutory consultees, including Greater Manchester Ecology Unit. The applicants have patiently sought to progress the application to a negotiated solution with officers and to negate a requirement for further appeal. As referenced in the officer's report, changes to the application have responded to points that have been made, and it is now considered that there are no technical objections to the proposal from any statutory consultees. The scheme and contribution elements now agreed with your officers provide a significant range of benefits. The scheme is for 100% affordable units, which will be taken forward by a major local registered provider and will meet a significant identified need for such housing in the borough, as confirmed by recent appeal decisions. The borough need is a clear and pressing requirement, and it is not relevant to just consider the local and village needs in the context of the borough housing need. The scheme will provide bungalows for the elderly or less mobile residents, one-bed apartments for smaller families, and also 2, 3 and 4-bed family homes, thus addressing a range of family needs. Ecological improvements to boundary landscaping and the existing pond will be supplemented by a new pond, new tree planting, bird and bat boxes and other native planting around the site. The suite of highway improvements have been confirmed with LCC. It will deliver over £50,000 worth of improvements, including elements that will slow speeds and enhance safety at the junctions of Church Lane and Chorley Lane. The relocation of the bus stops on Chorley Road closer to the site will also enhance the access to more residents in the village. And the £225,000 of the funding will increase the frequency of bus services to the area. This will benefit the village and also other villages along the routes. £233,000 of contributions to open space improvements will include improvements to playing pitches and parks and gardens, with the local orchard site near the church being the potential funded scheme. A contribution of £92,000 for 4 secondary school places, as requested by LCC Education, is also to be made. No primary school funding has been requested by LCC. Alongside the provision of the fully affordable scheme, the various contributions amount to about £600,000. We support the recommendation of your officers for approval, and subject to the members' decision this evening, the applicant would then look to take forward with discharge of conditions over 2022 and commence in site in 2023 to meet the housing need as soon as is possible. As a long-established employer and in line with the employment and skill plans, there will be also opportunity for wider employment and economic benefits from the site. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. Just before I go to members, I'd just like to bring Adele in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just want to clarify a point that's been mentioned by a couple of the speakers a short moment ago. Reference has been made to a recommendation in 2021 that the application is approved. That is referenced in your addendum, but just to clarify matters, that wasn't a recommendation on the outcome of the application to this committee. What is referred to is an internal memo, if you like, from our colleagues in the council's policy team to the case officer, which set out the planning position as it existed in early 2021. Members will be aware that the policy position has changed significantly since that time. So I just want to clarify that there was no formal recommendation on an application in 2021. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, members, it's over to you, Councillor Wheelton.
Thank you, Chair. As I was born and bred in Charnock, Richard, I think I better speak first. I was disappointed when this application came in that the applicant did not consult with the village people. I know Taylor Wimpey did when they applied. But on reading the reports, to start with, it sounds like it's going to be refused, but as we get into it, it's more about something out of our hands, really, about us not having the 5-year housing supply. This is in a sense, penalising Charnock Richard because of the council's previous inadequacies. What I'd like to do is possibly, it's no point arguing about this policy one because it's been dealt with. The speakers have dealt with certain other things, but that it is an adverse, will have adverse impact on all residents in the village with the extra traffic and the numbers. I think on paragraph 68 to 70, there's something there that is very telling. Can I just find it again? It says the applicant considers the proposed to be in a sustainable location as identified planning benefits from the proposed development. Well, it's not a sustainable location. There's nothing there to really sustain that number of houses at the present time. Previous development offered a shop on site, which would have been more appropriate. But there's, I think, 2 people I've got the names down to for wanting social housing or affordable housing in Charnock Richard, which shows really there's not a lot of people feel it is a sustainable site. So with amenities. So I'll have to probably, or I will, be moving a recommendation for refusal on this item. And I'll give you the reasons later.
So is that a proposal for refusal then?
Sorry?
Just to clarify, are you making a proposal for refusal?
I'll make a proposal for refusal on this item, but I'll give you the reasons later. I'll let other people speak as well.
Right.
Through Chair, can I just make a comment there? If you are proposing to refuse, we'd obviously need the reasons now. So if you could provide those to the committee, please.
Chair, I'll carry on a bit longer. Policy 1, obviously, of small-scale developments and infills. The site is not a sustainable location for the number of houses. The development will bring adverse impact onto residents of the village with 38 per hectare density. It's not really in keeping with present housing stock, and there is no provision on the site for any green space or anywhere for anything else like that, play area.
I'm just going to bring a Dale in on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. They don't actually qualify as a justified reasons for refusal, because what you need to do as members of this committee, you need to identify what the harm is, what causes the harm, and what policy is contrary to. So for the avoidance of the progressing the debate, I would suggest that once you've had a little bit more debate, if before you move to the vote, we may need to do a short adjournment to actually enable you the opportunity to actually draft an appropriate reasons for refusal.
Okay, I'll accept that. Thanks for your advice.
Okay, yeah, I'm quite happy with that too. Councillor Whittaker, it's up to you next.
Thanks, Chair. I've read the report. I have some serious concerns about this recommendation. I recognise the issues that the officers have identified, and the officers are professional planning officers, and there are 208 paragraphs that some of us lay people have to try and get our teeth around. I've attended a meeting of residents. I've attended a meeting of the parish council. I've seen the comments from the parish council and the consultation that was referred to earlier. I recognise the difficulties for officers, and in the report it talks about adequacy of a 5-year supply and so on. It also refers to the situation in Eccleston, in Adlington and Coppull and so on. What it doesn't refer to, I don't think, is in the situation at Whitley Woods, where the inspector upheld our decision, notwithstanding the lack of a 5-year supply. So that's an issue. The key is sustainability. And if you read paragraph on page 1, and Adele referred to this earlier, and it says, I'll wait till you get there, Chair. All right. The proposed development is contrary to policy 1 of the core strategy. The application site is not within an area that has been identified for growth and investment. The only types of development that will be considered acceptable in smaller villages, such as Charnock Richard, will typically be small scale and limited to appropriate infilling, conversion of buildings and proposal to meet local needs. None of those apply. Now, it's been suggested earlier that policy 1 has been dismissed because of the 5-year supply. I don't accept that. I don't accept that at all. Officers make recommendations, members decide. That was a long-standing thing that the late Jack Wilson used to drum into us. Right. It's clear, therefore, that Charnock Richard is not identified as a growth of this type. The planning history, which Adele referred to, 66 homes 2 years ago, 3 years ago, on a site 3 times as big, which was turned down, albeit we had a 5-year supply, allegedly, right? 76 properties, low cost, various types. Chorley Council has a need for 490 across the borough. According to the report, I read in somewhere in the report, just 2 people identified a need in Charnock Richard out of 409. I accept, and everybody on this planning committee would accept that there's a need for low-cost housing. Everybody accepts that. But it's got to be located in the right place, and it's got to meet local needs. Some of the issues which are referred to by the developer's agent, whatever, sat behind me, talk about Lancashire County Council. I'm sorry, Lancashire County Council, if you've got 76 low-cost houses, some of which are family homes, and you're telling me that how many secondary places do you need? 4. Where are these children going to go to? Right? There's no mention at all of primary school places. Charnock Richard Primary School is full. The local village schools are full. Where on earth are these people going to go? How are they going to get there? Well, Lancashire County Council says we'll put on a few bus services and we'll move the bus stop onto Chorley Road. Absolute nonsense. They talk about highway improvements. Paragraph 111, I think, I can't just find it now, but paragraph talks about highway safety. The pictures that have been sent by one of the earlier speakers show the congestion on Church Road, on Charter Lane. The school is full with people picking up. There's a nursery school at the junction of Charter Lane. There's a football ground, there's a cricket ground and so on. It's gridlocked during term time. Weekends, maybe they can get away with it. But to talk about just moving bus stops and providing a few buses for a few years, and it's all right talking, what happens after the few years? What happens to that? When the kids grow up, where do they go to school? References made to schools, medical facilities, commerce, highway safety. I've said I acknowledge the difficulties of officers given the previous appeal decisions which have been overturned, our decisions that have been overturned on appeal. But this is a classic case of unsustainability. Unsustainability, I think I wrote it down somewhere, the definition of sustainability is not making excessive use of limited resources. This is making excessive use. We're providing 76 houses in an area where nobody's asked for any, apart from 2 people. There's no suggestion about that. It's based on the methodology. Adele talks about policy. It's the methodology of the government which says we need so many versus the methodology which we've had in Chorley of Chorley Borough Council, which talks about people. And what the Minister said in a previous report is that local people know best. This flies in the face of that, Chair. Local people know what's going on in Charnock, Richard, and this, if it's approved, would be a wrong decision. And the people have spoken in Charnock, Richard, residents have spoken, parish council have spoken. I think we should take very good care to listen to what they say, Chair. Councillor Heaton's moved refusal. I'll second refusal. And if that fails, I'll give you notice of another proposal, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. I'd just like to bring Adele in before any other members. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just a point of clarification. Councillor Whittaker, you mentioned that there was no reference to the appeal decision at Whitley Woods in the report. Can I refer you to paragraphs 42 to 51, where there is a summary of those decisions? The inspector for the Whitley Woods appeal found that, again, there was a lack of a 5-year housing land supply, and that appeal was dismissed on the grounds of the impacts on highway safety, which had been a reason for refusal and was supported by Lancashire County Council. Just as a matter of clarification, thank you.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Whittaker?
Just grateful for that clarification. Adele's quite right. It was said, but it was dismissed. The appeal was dismissed on the grounds of highway safety. And that is what we're talking about here. Significant highway hazards. Albeit that Lancashire County Council say there isn't going to be any, but people who live there know very well that there is. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Do any other members wish to make comments on this application? Councillor Boardman.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the speakers of this evening. I think they've all spoken very well. I'm not going to go into detail about the write-up of the write-up report. I think it's incredibly well written and covers a significant amount of detail. I think Councillor Whittaker hit the point, hit the nail on the head really, with the comments with regards to is this the correct location? Well, possibly it isn't the correct location. Charnock Richard is a very small village. Any of you go through Charnock Richard at 3 o'clock on an afternoon know that Church Lane is gridlocked and you can't get past. And for those, and for that reason on its own, 5 days of the week, 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the morning, 2:30 till, I think there's an after-school club as well, till about 3:45. It's pretty much chocker down there. The application in front of us does not provide any additional parking, off-street or on-street. I would say that vehicles exiting onto Church Lane, there'd be a significant risk there at a certain time of day. I know none of this is supported by Lancashire County Council's Highways Department, but I think if we were looking for a reason to have a look at this site in a bit more detail, I'd prefer to move to a site visit, to be perfectly honest with you, and to be arranged around about 3 o'clock on an afternoon, maybe a Wednesday, and let this committee see for themselves what the situation is. So I'll move for a site visit.
Thank you, Councillor Boardman. Any other members wish to comment? Councillor Beaver and then Councillor Nevitt. Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. It's just finding me one. I agree with everything that's been said. I'd like to second that site visit. Thank you.
Councillor Nevitt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just 2 questions for Adele. So from the local plan, firstly, can we confirm that this application is not contrary to policy HS7, which deals with rural infilling? And secondly, can we confirm that it's not contrary to policy HS8, which deals with specifically with rural affordable housing? And for the benefit of committee members, that policy is broken down into 5 key objectives. The first one, objective A, being that there is no suitable site available elsewhere within the village. Objective B, that the scale and nature of the development would be in character with the settlement. Objective C, that the development would significantly contribute to the solution of a local housing problem that cannot be solved in any other way. Objective D, the occupancy of the dwellings would be limited to people with a close local connection who are unable to afford market housing. And lastly, objective E, that the development is managed by a registered provider or similar body. Thanks, Chair.
We're just having a quick look at the local plan. Councillor Whittaker, did you want to come back with something before Adele responds to Councillor Nevitt there?
Thanks, Chair. My second proposal, should the proposition to refuse Phil, would be to ask for a site visit, right? So I'm not sure of the procedural wise, but I'd like to have that proposition for refusal tested first, and then if that fails, then I'll go for a site visit.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whittaker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, we're satisfied there's no conflict with the two policies that you referred to. In terms of rural infilling, it's not being considered as an infill site, so it's not applicable. And the rural affordable housing exception sites, it's really about sites that are outside of the settlement areas rather than on the edge of it, because part of the village can still be outside the settlement area.
Okay, do any other members wish to make any comment on this at all? Councillor Morwood, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a difficult one, and I understand the concerns of the residents. I'm not sure about the concerns of some of the speakers from the committee. At the end of the day, we know we have not got the whole idea of the policies and affordable housing and where we put it and so forth. It's all changed in this last year. It doesn't matter harping back to 2017. We have not got a 5-year supply. It's been clear. We've fought it many times, and now 5 appeals have gone against us, well and truly. We need to put houses, and the more houses we have, the more choice people have. And I'm not into they should be put somewhere, but not here. Put them somewhere else, but not here. Affordable housing has to be somewhere else. And that's the feeling I'm getting. Affordable housing, and then people say, stroke social housing, they are not interchangeable, they're not the same. Affordable housing is housing it's designed to be easily accessible for everyone, anyone, no matter what their age, no matter what their pay, their salary, their class, or whatever. And I'm sorry if I'm getting a little bit that way, because that's the feeling I'm getting that's coming across. We need houses. Why shouldn't anyone have the chance to go and live in a nice rural area, should they choose? And if there are more houses for people to choose from, then I'm happy with that. Yes, it's a struggle because of the local facility. Perhaps then some entrepreneur might say, there's obviously a growing community there that will need housing, GPs and a shop and so on. There are lots of little villages around Chorley that have done that. And I'm not sure, speak up, Mr. Councillor, and we can have this discussion, no doubt, at another time. Highway safety, LCC, we pick and choose. We can't say, well, LCC, we're against it. We tend to ignore LCC because they're always saying there's never any problem with the highways. But we were happy to accept it in one of the other the Whittle one, thank you. LCC pointed out that there was a problem, that's why it was refused. They haven't pointed out there's a problem in this one. So we can't pick and choose and say, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about this time. That's the way it is. We have to take, they're the professionals. I know we don't accept it all the time, but that's the way it is. We have to accept what they say in this case. At the moment, I'm in favour of the proposal. If you want to go on a site visit, that's fine, and I will go on the site visit like everyone else. But that's the way I feel at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Would any other member like to make comment? Councillor Gabbett?
Thank you, Chair. Pretty much echoing what Councillor Morewood's already said, is a year ago, before that, I would have been probably objecting to this. But since then, obviously, we've had Nell Lane and Claytonley Woods, where the road was a lot worse. And the planning inspector has told us that no, that's right for development, and overturned our decision. So, and I see it set out by officers quite well, and I can see the amount of people that have complained and raised issues. And it's a tough one, but I do think we are in a position where we're a rock and a hard place, where the planning inspector is saying that realistically we should be building houses where we can. And I think that's what we've got to do in this occasion. So I'd second Councillor Morwood's proposal to go with officers' recommendations, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wish to comment again? Councillor G and then Councillor Nevitt.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with Councillor Morwood. I'm looking at the map here. The land is surrounded at the back and to the sides with houses. It is a nice part of the world, and I think people, they're saying that people shouldn't have to come and live there, but a lot of the houses you have to remember that it might be the children of the families that live there that can afford the houses. Hopefully that's what it be. As for shops and that, it's a community market. Whether people travel to, all these people that are in these houses have to travel to the shops. Yes, it would be more traffic and it's unfortunate, but the way things are now, it is one of these things that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I personally think that agree with Councillor Morwood that it is an awkward one, but I think the officers have done a very good job on the report, and I would like to go for acceptance, but I will bow to pressure and go for a site visit. Thank you.
Okay, just for clarity, Councillor Morwood, were you actually making a proposal for officer recommendations? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Nevitt.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. From what I've heard tonight, I am not dismayed by anything that residents of Charnock Richard have said. I don't think this is the case that residents of one of our rural villages are saying we don't want affordable housing for affordable housing's sake. I think what has been said clearly tonight is that this is an unsuitable area because of the lack of local services surrounding it. Not once has anyone inferred that this is a case of not wanting neighbours next door. On the contrary, it's actually been said by public speaker from Charnock Richard Parish Council that they accept the principle of some development of a limited scale here at some point in the future. But, you know, just to add some context to this idea of, you know, local amenities, for instance, new residents moving in, if they wanted to go to that nearest Tesco, which was allegedly 3 kilometres away, it's actually 3 miles away. It's over an hour's walk. If you wanted to try and use public transport, the best Google can give you is a half-an-hour walk to the nearest suitable bus route, and then once you've got off, a 40-minute walk back. So I wouldn't propose that is sustainable either. Councillor Morwood raised that we have to abide by what LCC highways say. On this one, I'd agree, but I'd also look at the facts contained in the report. Paragraph 126, the highways assessment from 2017, found average speeds on Charter Lane, which has a speed limit of 30 miles an hour, were quite usually between 35 and 37 miles per hour. So already there are speed concerns without any additional development. Additionally, if we look at paragraph 150, the visibility displays that would be part of this application are 7 metres short north and 9 metres short south, and on a road that is at best averaging 5.5 metres wide, that could pose a very considerable hazard. So I'm quite happy to go with what's in the report. I think members will make their own decisions. But as for previous decisions that have happened in the last year, Charnock Richard residents aren't to blame for housing supply, and Charnock Richard residents aren't going to be held to ransom by the Planning Inspectorate. I firmly believe in the sovereignty of councils to make these decisions. I firmly believe in the sovereignty of the Planning Committee to be able to make these decisions. We shouldn't be held to ransom by the possibility of a future appeal. We have to stand up for our decisions, so I'll allow members to vote accordingly. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Whittaker, if it's a quick one. Go.
Just to confirm, Chair, nobody is saying we shouldn't have anything in Charnock Richard. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's trying to say you've got to have some in all over Chorley, but nothing in Charnock Richard. Nobody's trying to say that Charnock Richard is sacrosanct in any way, shape or form. We're talking about the key word all the way through here is sustainability. That's what we're talking about. Nobody's mentioned school places. Where are the kids going to go? What's going to happen? What's going to happen in 5 years when the children are there and they're having to get on a bus route, walking half a mile to a bus route? It's nonsense. So, but just to make that point, Chair, nobody's saying is Charnock Richard is sacrosanct. What I'm saying and what people in the villages are saying is that this is not the right application. We do need sustainable, affordable houses. We don't need them in Charnock Richard. We need some, but and it's in the report. 2 people have identified Charnock Richard out of 490.
Thank you,
I'll
Councillor
shut up,
Whittaker.
Chair. Thank you.
I think you've made your points quite clear. Right, any other member wish to make a comment before I adjourn the meeting for a few minutes, then we can just discuss some points of clarification.
Chair,
yes.
On light of the number of people who would like to go on site and look at it, I will withdraw my motion of refusal at this time.
Sorry, Chair, I think the actual motion would actually go ahead in terms of the amendments already been proposed and seconded. Obviously, there was some reasons that we were actually waiting for. So, do you have those reasons?
I'm quite happy to take an adjourn.
My reasons weren't adequate, so we need to stop the meeting and have discussion. I was trying to make progress.
So, Chair, it's the actual. It's at your discretion. So, if you wanted to take the site visit motion first, you can do, rather than take the amendments. That's entirely up to you.
Okay, in that case, I'll take votes for a site visit then. So I'll do that first. Yeah, so we're now voting on deferral for a site visit. Councillor Wheelton, I don't think you voted. I've taken the vote for site visit first. Well, then can you press your abstain button? Thank you. You voted against it there. Was that what you meant to do? If you press the right button. I think he may have pressed the wrong button, Councillor Whittaker, so we're just giving him the opportunity to correct that. Can we reset the vote? Okay. I think, Taz, can you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to defer this matter to allow them to carry out a site visit. Thank you.
Chair, can I clarify, when we have the site visit, can we do it when the school's in session at a time that the school's in session?
That will be discussed with the Chair and we'll get back to you on that. Thank you. Okay, if anyone's come just for that item and they wish to leave at this point, please feel free. And thank you everyone for your contributions there. Thank you. Okay, I'm just going to adjourn the meeting just for 5 minutes. I've had a request for a comfort break, so if you want to be back in 5 minutes, or you can stay here and just adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. So we'll continue. So item 3C, the Croft, Lower Simpson Fold, Blackburn Road, High Wheelton. There's an update on your addendum, but the recommendation remains the same. Ian's going to present the item. The officer recommendation remains that planning permission is granted subject to conditions. I have one registered speaker, Zara Moon, who's here in person. And sorry, can we just mute that? Thanks. Ian, can you present the report, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the erection of a detached dwelling following the demolition of the existing dwelling and garage at the Croft, Lower Simpson Fold off Blackburn Road in High Wheelton. The application site is located in the Greenbelt and comprises of a dwelling house and garage outbuilding. The site's previously developed land in line with the definitions set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. The framework and local plan allow for the redevelopment of such sites on the proviso that the development doesn't have a greater impact on openness than the existing development. Given the current impact of the existing buildings on the site to be removed, the proposed dwelling would not be materially larger and would not have a greater impact on openness. On this basis, it's not considered that the proposed development would constitute inappropriate development. The proposed dwelling would be of a similar height and footprint to the existing dwelling, whilst it would be of a simple, contemporary, modern appearance in contrast with the traditional appearance of the existing dwelling. Although the proposed dwelling wouldn't reflect the appearance of the existing house or other nearby properties, its position within the locality is such that it wouldn't be prominent and would have no detrimental impact on the character of the area as a result. The proposed dwelling would meet with the Council's interface guidelines, and there would be no unacceptable impact on residential amenity as a result of the development. LCC Highways have assessed the scheme and raised no objection. It's therefore considered that the proposed development would not have a significant impact on highway safety, capacity or amenity in the immediate vicinity of the site. There'd be no unacceptable impact on trees or ecology, subject to the implementation of adequate mitigation measures, whilst all issues are covered in detail within the committee report. The proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ian, Zara, would you like to make your representations? Thank you.
Good evening, members of the committee. I'm Zara Moon from Zara Moon Architects and I'm the agent for the application. The applicant, Carrie Sharp, and her family have lived at the Croft for the last 21 years. Carrie has slowly tried to adapt the property to meet her living requirements with small changes over time and a number of small extensions. They feel they have now exhausted the current limitations of the property, which now needs a full refurbishment, reconfiguration and extension to accommodate 3 generations living under one roof. Kerry previously submitted an application to extend the property instead, which was refused as the proposed extensions would have resulted in more than a 50% increase in volume compared to the original property. Therefore, the most suitable option to comply with Greenbelt policy was instead to replace the existing dwelling with a high-quality, sustainable home within the volume limits of the site. Compared to the existing house, the proposed house decreases the ground floor footprint, decreases the overall height, and has an increase in volume of only 24%, which is under the acceptable 30% limit for replacement dwellings in Greenbelt. The house will minimise its energy usage and carbon footprint and includes a sustainable heating and ventilation system, rainwater collection, solar power generation, battery storage, and high levels of insulation and air tightness. The site is completely screened by natural landscaping and the property is hidden from Blackburn Road. The house has been sited more central to the site, reducing the length of built form along the boundary and improving the relationship between the neighbouring properties. There is no consistent architectural style locally. The proposal is therefore a flat roof contemporary design to minimise the proposed height and allows volume to be utilised more efficiently. Even though the existing dwelling is a bungalow, much of the volume is within a pitched roof. Therefore, by redesigning the property as a 2-storey flat roof alternative actually reduces the height compared to the existing. A flat roof contemporary home was approved and built on Withnell Fold, therefore a contemporary style home would also be acceptable on this local site. The house includes a wheelchair accessible annex for an elderly family member who requires level access, their own living space and a second bedroom for a carer. A number of concerns have been raised from local residents. However, these have either been addressed or confirmed there will be no impact by the planning officer. There is no impact on neighbouring properties, access, trees or ecology of the site, no overlooking and no impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. We have worked with the planning department over the last 5 months to create a scheme which the planning officers and other consultants are happy to support. Planning conditions will be included to safeguard the conditions, the site conditions, the access lane and the impact on the neighbouring properties. This bespoke property has been designed to meet the requirements of the applicant's family, creates a contemporary response to the site and is within the acceptable limits of Greenbelt planning policy. We therefore ask you to please follow the recommendations of the planning department and grant approval for a beautiful, sustainable, high quality family home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Perfect timing that as well, wasn't it? Brilliant. Okay, members, I'd like to invite you to make your contribution now. Thank you. Councillor France first.
Thank you, Chair. Just going to page 70, I've just slight concerns. In paragraph 10, representations, I think it's the third one down, people comment about overbearing and impact on privacy, given overlooking, especially from the proposed first floor balcony, contrary to planning policy. Just want to see what officers thought about that, because I notice on page 171, the 4th comment down from Wheelton Parish Council also refers to this balcony overlooking neighbouring properties and being intrusive. And I also know included in there is I think it's the 4th comment down on page 170, paragraph 10, overbearing impact on privacy given overlooking, especially from, I've mentioned that one. So it's just really, you know, is there a problem with this balcony overlooking other properties?
Thank you, Councillor France. Just before I bring you in, Councillor Boardman, I'm just going to ask Ian to come back on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Through you. Yes, the balcony would be screened to the sides where it would face towards the more sensitive receptors, but the development does comply with all the council's interface standards, so it meets all the distances that we would expect in relation to a dwelling that had facing windows or balconies, where there were gardens and other dwellings around it. So it does comply with those guidelines, and for those reasons it's considered to be an acceptable relationship. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Councillor Boardman.
Here we have in front of us an application for replacement dwelling that meets all our policies, as a planning officer's state. Has got a design which is well thought through, is lower than the existing dwelling that's on the site. To quote Adele from the last planning meeting, sometimes when you look at a planning application for replacement dwelling, you'd rather go out than up to reduce the impact. I remember that one. And I can't really see a great deal with it. What I'm surprised is that in paragraph 10, this application of one dwelling is actually driven out 20 letters of objections from 9 individuals. So are we seeing that each individual wrote in twice and was that concerned about it? I have no issues with this whatsoever. It's a simple replacement dwelling application. I think the design is fantastic for that area. We have to look at more modern and contemporary properties. Not everybody wants a nice red brick house with some render and some dormers on the roof. So I'd move to support the application, the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Boardman. Any other member wish to make a comment? Councillor Beaver.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to echo what's just been said there. In the representations, paragraph 10, those numerous points there, most of them were questions, not really objections. Is it bigger? Is it that? Is it the other? It's in the report. I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beaver. Any other member wish to make a comment on this application? In that case, we're at the end of the debate and I will move to the vote. So we've had a proposal for officer recommendations, so we'll now move to the vote. Thank you. Councillor France, you've not voted.
Just to clarify my position, Chair, this is what I put a personal interest for. That's why I've abstained.
Thank you, Councillor Gabbard. Okay, Taz, will you confirm the outcome of the vote?
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant planning permission subject to conditions in respect of the Croft, Lower Simpson Fall, Blackburn Road, High Wheelton. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Taz. Okay, so item 3D has been withdrawn, so we're going to, yeah, if you've come just for that one, you're free to go. Thank you. I'm just going to pause just for a minute while we bring in the speakers for the next item. Thanks.
Microphone goes on.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So this is item 3E, land adjacent to 179 Chapel Lane, Coppull, Chorley. There's an update on your addendum. The recommendation remains the same. Ian will present the item. Officer recommendation remains that planning permission is refused. I have registered speakers. I have an objector, Mike Cunliffe, Ward Councillor Julia Berry, and the applicant Dan Rigby in person. All of them, in fact. Ian, can I ask you to present the report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks permission in principle for the erection of up to 8 dwellings with associated parking spaces and gardens on land to the south of 179 Chapel Lane in Coppull. The application site is located in the Greenbelt at Coppull and comprises of open grassland. The scope of application seeking permission in principle is limited to location, land use and amount of development. Other matters should be considered at the technical details consent stage should permission in principle be granted. As such, matters relating to highways, ecology, character and amenity impacts fall outside of what the local planning authority can assess as part of this current application. It's purely about the principle of development. In considering matters of principle, the framework sets out that the development of new buildings in the Greenbelt should be regarded as inappropriate, subject to a number of exceptions. The proposed development would not meet with any of these exceptions and is therefore inappropriate development, which is harmful by definition. There would also be additional harm to the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt that would be caused through a contribution to unrestricted sprawl and encroachment. There are no very special circumstances that are considered to exist and would outweigh the definitional harm to the Greenbelt, which must be accorded substantial weight in line with the framework, in addition to other identified harm. It's therefore recommended that permission be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ian, Mike, are you okay to make your representations now?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman, councillor members. My name is Mike Cunliffe and I live opposite the proposed planning site at 194 Chapel Lane. I've been asked to represent the residents, read the objections raised in opposing the permission in principle application to erect up to 8 dwellings on Chapel Lane. There are many important objections that have been raised by residents. varying from the infrastructure, lack of available places for our children in schools, waiting times in gaining a doctor's appointments, no bus service being available, hence putting more cars on an already busy lane, I say lane, not road, and increasing the safety risks to our children, cyclists, walkers and horse riders alike. The impact on wildlife is also seen as a major objection, as this land is used as a habitat for many of God's creatures, of which some are on the red list of threatened species. The hedgerows have been there for more than 50 years and we believe should be protected status or given protected status. But our primary objection to this planning proposal is because it does not meet with the National Planning Policy Framework principles. The fundamental aim of the Greenbelt policy is to prevent urban sprawl by keeping land permanently open. An essential characteristics of greenbelts are their openness and their permanence. We believe the proposal does not meet this requirement and would harm the openness of the green belt. It is also our opinion the proposed development fails to satisfy any of the exceptions set out in paragraph 149 of the framework and detailed in policy HS7. It is therefore inappropriate development in the green belt. We must protect our green belt lands now and for the future generations. If this plan is approved, I'm afraid the floodgates would open to other further encroachments of our green belts. In relation to the openness of this green belt, I'd like to finish with a quote from one of my heroes, Sir David Attenborough, who said, "No one will protect what they don't care about, and no one will care about what they have never experienced. For the sake of our children and future generations, please do the right thing and reject this proposal." Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Councillor Berry, over to you.
Yeah, could I just, before I speak, could I just confirm that you have received representation from Coppull Parish Council? I think in the report I last looked at, on the website, it just looked like we have received something, like it to be considered.
Let's go back at all.
Through you, Chair, I'll just refer you to the addendum. The Parish Council's comments are reported on the addendum.
Thank you.
Okay, would you like to make your representations? Thanks.
I commend the representation made tonight by Mike on behalf of Coppull residents, an emotive but objective and robust case for supporting refusal of this application. I would like to advise this committee to respect the recommendations of the residents and our planning officer on the strength that this application is contrary to National Planning Policy Framework and Policy HS7 of our Chorley local plan by definition. Also, please refer to yourselves to the further evidence contained in paragraphs 7 to 41. Can I thank officers for their objective and detailed report? Please accept this officer's recommendation refusal, and I'd like to. I think hopefully your decision will remind developers and reassure residents that this committee does not and will not adopt a light touch when it comes to safeguarding our green belt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berry. Just before I move on to the next speaker, can I just request that everyone's mobile phones are on silent before we continue? Thank you. Right, Dan, over to you.
My name's Dan Rigby. I am the principal owner of the land and live at 179, which is a farmhouse which is proposed next to the site. The reason why we've gone in for planning principle is purely for that, because we believe it is suitable in principle, this land. The reason for this is it is a small development which has been noted within the comments and very similar to the 3B, which has gone before you, but on a very, very small scale, is looking to go with the council's need for housing within the local area. Although the local plan states normally 1 to 2 in infilling, this is obviously just an infilling section. my house is 179 and next door is 201. My original plans from my ancestry that shows it when it was part of the Ellerbeck estate would have always had plans for housing, of which some have been built further down from 201 up to the vicarage. Them plans, although and obviously no longer within consideration, was always designed to be part of Coppull Lane. Obviously, meeting local needs is a key issue, and when we was getting to the technical stage, obviously, them areas would have been put forward. But paragraph 79 of the National Planning Policy Framework clearly states that if the design was innovative and the housing which was to be constructed met this, it would be applicable, of which we're not at the technical stage, so they was never brought forward. We was also looking to potentially put a local cafe on the site when we got to the technical stage, although that wasn't put forward, which would have enhanced the local area and needing the local area with the walking that goes on in our local area. Also to point out that this is currently private land, and although this is there's no walkways, it wouldn't have affected anything in that regard. We was going to open this up for local use. We was going to, when we got to technical stage, consult with both the local community and the horse show that currently rent the facility off us, and we was going to work with the horse show to provide a facility that worked for them as well as the local residents. That was going to go into the when we got to the technical stage, if it got to the technical stage. There was also plans for potentially to look at a nursery on the site, which would have been a key factor moving forward. But again, that was going to be at the technical stage. The principle in the principle, the planning in principle was purely that, to show that we was infilling at this point. Although I do understand the local need as just one or maybe two houses, I think it is clear with just the design of the current setup that there was always meant to be houses in this position. In regards to the local objections, we too regard this land as Greenbelt and everything behind it. We've been approached by several large developers to purchase the whole site, including all 10 acres of our land, of which we've rejected on several occasions. And that is my part. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, members, it's over to you. Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. Fairly straightforward, I think, despite the fact that we have no longer have a 5-year plan, hence the dilemma, my dilemma certainly with 3B earlier, but it's straightforward. This is Greenbelt. This is not land that we are yet going to use, and hope we don't get to that stage. So it's Greenbelt. It's not got any special circumstances. Therefore, I'm happy to support the proposal to refuse. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Morwood. Councillor Gabbett.
Thank you, Chair. Again, echo the sentiments of Councillor Morwood there. It's the officers set out quite clearly that it's in the green belt and it's not considered limited infilling, which I think the applicant's admitted in his speech earlier. So I would second the proposal to go with officers' recommendations.
Thank you. Any other member wish to make a comment on this application? In that case, I will move to the vote. So this is a vote for officer recommendations. Okay, Taz, over to you to confirm that.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to refuse the permission in principle for the reasons outlined in the report in respect of land adjacent to 179 Chapel Lane, Coppull, Chorley. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So if you've come just for that item, you're free to leave the chamber. And I think we've got some more speakers to come in, is that correct? Yeah, you can do. Thank you.
Button, light comes on.
Okay, thank you everybody. So we'll move on to application 3F. This is 153 School Lane, Brinscall, Chorley. Adele is going to present this item. Officer recommendation is that it's recommended that planning permission is granted. I have two registered speakers, Nigel Barnes and Helen Jones, the objector and the applicant respectively. Adele, if you can present the report for me, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a detached two-storey property located on School Lane in Brinscall that has been extended previously by the addition of a two-storey rear and single-storey side extension. The property is bounded on either side by bungalows and pitches associated with Brinscall Football Club to the rear. Planning permission is sought retrospectively for a single-storey rear extension with a balcony above, including 1.8 metre high privacy screens. The extension itself is already constructed. The single-storey extension has a high-level window in the elevation facing number 155 and full-height windows in the elevation facing the boundary with 151 in addition to the rear elevation. The extension is located to the rear of the property and as such is not visible within the street scene, with longer range views available from the football pitch, which is in private ownership to the rear. The relationship with neighbouring properties is assessed and detailed in your report. Ultimately, it's considered that the relationship is acceptable and that the proposed 1.8 metre high privacy screens would adequately preserve the privacy of the neighbouring properties. The erection of the screens prior to the first use of the balcony and the level of obscurity can be secured by a condition, and therefore on that basis the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adele. So, Nigel, I'd like to invite you to make your representations. Thank you.
I and my wife have lived at 157 School Lane since March 1996, and we have enjoyed the amenity of our own home and gardens, along with a reasonable amount of privacy and positive relationships with our surrounding neighbours. In 2012, we purchased 155 School Lane, which became an extension to our own home, both in the occupancy of the house and especially in the gardens. In December 2019, we refurbished the property and created a holiday let, which we advertise on the Airbnb platform. We enjoy the full amenity of the holiday let and its gardens for personal use. Over the last 2 years, it has become successful, with guests enjoying the privacy and the outlook of our home, which is detailed in a number of reviews on Airbnb. Throughout our time in these properties, several neighbours have invested, modernised and extended their properties with clear conscience to maintain their developments in keeping with the materials used, but also to respect their neighbours. In autumn 2021, following the sale of 153 School Lane, new neighbours arrived and sourced a builder who could commence work reasonably soon for a rear single-storey extension. It was only after the builder commenced the footings that the owners explained briefly to us what their intentions were: single-storey extension, cream render with roof lanterns. On completion of the external walls, I repeatedly asked the builder if a balcony was being considered, as the external walls were so high. The builder explained a balcony was not being considered as it was not conform to permitted development regulations. After the work had been completed and the builder had left the site, Helen, the owner of 153, approached me and said that somebody had reported them to the council for putting a roof terrace on top of the new extension. She laughed it off as complete rubbish. It was only when we received retrospective planning application from the council for the extension and the balcony that we knew it wasn't. In fact, I would argue that it always an intention to have a balcony. Incidentally, the plans displayed on public view are incorrect. The balcony access point is through a set of French doors that are on the left as you look at the property, and opposite on the plans shows them on the opposite side. So, the extension covers the whole width of the rear of the house and is quite high. Although we do not oppose the scale of it, the outer finishing is cream render. This is not in keeping with the rest of the house, nor is it aesthetically pleasing to the eye, but it's situated at a lower gradient to our properties and is separated by a fence.
Will you just wind it up there for
Yeah.
the near the finish?
So wherever we stand or sit in our properties, either 155, 157, if anybody's on the balcony, they can look over and they have the access to all the gardens all the way down. And
Thank you. Thank you
object
for your
to it.
contribution. We're going to have to move on there. So, Helen, if I can now invite you to make your representations. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Helen Jones and I'm speaking in support of the application as part owner of the property in question. I reside here with my partner and 2 children. In respect to the representations that have been made with regards to the amenity of the neighbouring properties, we were in fact ill-advised that the render was contravening permitted development, hence the retrospective application. It was also never our intention to put a balcony on. However, at a later date, we thought, well, actually, it would be really nice. As per the planning report, the extension is indeed rendered in off-white and is not of an excessive scale. We were unable to locate the exact same brick as the original house, so felt that a contrast was more in keeping, particularly given that neighbouring properties in the vicinity are either in part or wholly rendered. With regards to the loss of privacy to neighbouring gardens, we completely endorse and welcome the 1.8 metre privacy screen to either side of the neighbouring gardens, and with an obscurity level of 5, as the report suggests, it would quite rightly preserve the privacy to the properties either side of us. Lastly, in respect to the balcony being large enough for groups of people to congregate with resulting disturbance and noise, the proposed roof terrace is in fact significantly reduced in size than it would initially appear due to the presence of 2 large roof lanterns in the extension below. You would in fact struggle to have little more than a few chairs on the actual terrace. And in any event, we're a couple in our 50s, we live a very quiet life in what we consider to be our forever home. Furthermore, the sole access to the roof is through our bedroom, so as for groups of people congregating, it simply isn't possible, practical or indeed acceptable. The neighbouring property of 155, from whom the only objection has arisen, does in fact, obviously, as Nigel said, operate as an airbed and breakfast as opposed to a domestic dwelling. Their 5-star rating hasn't been awarded as a result of having a business next door to neighbours who entertain groups of people and create their disturbance. Indeed, their reviews do refer to it being very quiet and peaceful. There is also an image here of a property in the vicinity that has a balcony, and that's just to illustrate that, you know, that such a structure isn't alien.
I'm not really happy for you to show
Okay.
pictures. They have to be submitted in
away.
advance at this point in time. Do you want to start to wind up? You've got
Yeah,
about 30
I would
seconds. Thank you.
respectfully submit our case to the committee and would like to thank you all for your time.
Okay. Thank you. In that case, members, it is over to you. Councillor France and then Councillor Gabbett.
Yeah, just very quickly, going to paragraph 10, it's quoted there that this is the rear of the property, which, yeah, is obviously better than it being on the front. But it says can be gained from larger range of views of the property and extension can be gained from the playing fields to the rear. However, these are private in ownership with located access gates. I just wish to point out there are a number of public footpaths, one running no more than 10 metres away from this property. So there are, nowadays in the village, we see an awful lot of vehicles. So there's an awful lot of walkers come on this land. There's a number of footpaths going across fields onto Harbour Lane. There are a number of footpaths running directly behind this, so this is going to be visible. What I feel I'd like to suggest, really, is, I know we tend to be a little bit against site visits, but I don't think realistically this can be viewed properly without a site visit. I think you've actually got to see it to come to your own considerations. That's my view anyway. So I'd like to propose a site visit.
Thank you, Councillor France. Councillor Gabbett.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to clarify with Adele, if that's okay. The paragraph number 17, normally when we get these items, it's written by planning officers on balance. It doesn't cause any overbearing impact or problems with amenity, but this one states categorically it does not. I just wanted to clarify, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The assessment has been undertaken in accordance with our normal householder design guidance. Ultimately, extensive permitted developments do exist, and the reason that this extension falls foul of those permitted development rights is because of the contrasting material. But I think the report also sets out that render isn't an alien feature in the street scene. So in terms of the architectural vernacular, there is a mix of property materials within the local area. But we're satisfied that it's not, there's no breach, there's no adverse impact from the extension in terms of outlook from existing windows.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Thanks, Chair. Just interested in this 1.8 metre screen, which appears on the, I think later on the agenda on the appeals process of the decision in Eccleston, where it was a balcony and a screen and so on and so forth. Can the officers advise, is this an opaque screen or is it clear or whatever?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. Essentially, the screen that would need to be installed would need to achieve basically what is a Pilkington level 5, which is the highest level of obscurity that you can actually get from that glazing manufacturer. So it would be obscurely glazed, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, would any of the members like to comment? Councillor Boardman.
With what the planning officer have stated, it's not unusual to see a rendered extension on the back of an Accrington brick red house. It's fairly common. I think the applicant has done the right thing. They did go down the route of permitted development, were probably misadvised. If it was in brick, there wouldn't be a problem here. If there was no balcony, there wouldn't be a problem here. It's in render, and they're looking to put a balcony on it. So they're looking to legalise the situation. I don't, for that instance, have an issue with the application, and I'd like to move for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Boardman. Any other members wish to comment on this? At the moment, I've got one proposal for a site visit and one proposal for officer recommendations. Councillor Heaton.
I'll second the recommendation, Chair. The recommendation for approval.
For officer recommendations, thank you. Would any other member, like Councillor Beaver?
Chair, I'd just like to ask about this, the overlooking bit. The fence is going to be 1.8 metres and the balcony is going to be over 2 metres and it's going to have some obscuration within it. Surely when you stand on that balcony, you're going to be able to look directly into every single part of that garden. And the 45-degree not hitting a window, but you're going to be overlooking the garden. Is that not the case?
I'll bring it down back.
Through you, Chair. No, the positioning of the privacy screens, the whole purpose of those is to actually prevent that direct overlooking.
Thank you.
Okay, has any other member wish to make a comment on this application? Okay, so at the moment I've got a proposer for a site visit, but I don't have a seconder, and I have a proposer and a seconder for officer recommendations. Therefore, I'm going to move to the vote. Thank you. So, all those in favour of officer recommendations? Councillor France, you haven't voted yet.
Doing the best.
Sorry. It's the technology. Okay, thank you. Taz, if you can confirm the vote for me, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant planning permission in respect of a single-storey rear extension with balcony retrospectively at 153 School Lane, Brinscall, Chorley. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So if you've come just for that application, you're free to leave. You can stay and watch the rest of the committee, but feel free to leave. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to item 3A. So this is land south of Mercer Court and east of Westhoughton Road, Adlington. There is an update on your addendum. The recommendation remains the same. Ian will present the item. Officer recommendation remains that planning permission is refused. So we have a registered speaker. We have an objector, Andrew Mackenzie, via Teams. We have Ward Councillor Alistair Bradley in person and Councillor Peter Wilson on Teams. And then we have the applicant, Eddie Joint, in person. Can I just confirm those on Teams can actually hear us before we start?
Can hear you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Mackenzie. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Ian, would you like to present the report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 6 buildings comprising 12 light industrial business units located to the west of the railway line at Adlington and to be accessed from Rawlinson Lane via Mercer Court. Members will recall that a previous application for 7 buildings was presented to committee in September last year, where a decision was made to refuse planning permission on the basis that undue noise and disturbance would be harmful to the amenity of neighbouring residential occupiers as a result of vehicles accessing the site with great regularity. The application site is a long, narrow strip of land previously used as a site compound for Network Rail and for general storage, and is previously developed land. The proposed development will be contained within the settlement area where there's a presumption in favour of sustainable development, as set out in the framework and the Chorley local plan. The proposed units will be of a modest scale and traditional design style and will be laid out in a linear pattern following the railway line, which is considered to be a suitable form of development appropriate to the character of this location. The application site is bound by residential development to the west, and there are dwellings on the opposite side of the railway line to the east. The proposed buildings themselves are not considered to result in any adverse impacts on the amenity of the occupiers of these dwellings, given their scale and design. It's noted that concerns have been raised in relation to noise and disturbance from the use of the site. A noise assessment has been submitted in support of the proposal, which has been reviewed by the Council's Environmental Health Officer, who raises no objection. Notwithstanding this, the proposal would introduce a commercial development that would result in an increased intensity of activity at the site from vehicles accessing the site with great regularity. It's not considered that reducing the proposed number of buildings by 1 compared to the previously refused application would make any material difference in reducing the magnitude of the impacts that have been identified. It's therefore considered that the proposal would still result in undue noise and disturbance that would be harmful to the amenity of neighbouring residential occupiers. The site will be accessed from Rawlinson Lane via Mercer Court as it is presently. LCC Highways consider that this would be an acceptable arrangement that would not be harmful to highway safety, subject to the provision of a suitable scheme for site access and off-site works of highway improvements, whilst there would be no adverse impacts on drainage, ecology or trees. The development would provide economic benefits of employment generation, whilst providing social benefits of comprehensively redeveloping previously developed land and eliminating an unrestricted use of the land. However, it's not considered that these benefits outweigh the harm to the amenity of neighbouring residential occupiers that was previously identified by the Planning Committee. It's therefore recommended that planning permission be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So, Andrew, if you can hear us, are you okay to make your representations now? Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me. And I appreciate we're just a layman here, just putting forwards our point of view. So I hope you appreciate that. Our objections, I'll try and keep them fairly brief, are obviously just the loss of privacy and overlooked from the site. We're actually on the Fairview estate, which is adjacent to the railway, but it is actually quite close or very close. We have windows overlooking that site, etc., which would create a significant change to I would suggest the outlook of our property and my family. Which leads on to sort of visual amenity. It's currently got shrubs and trees on the property. Obviously, commercial units are drastically different than that. My biggest concern would be highway safety as well as the community. I would, obviously we're objecting to this, but I would significantly suggest that if anybody's undecided about this, they do need to visit the site. I understand that somebody's done a safety assessment of this from what you've said, but it's that amazes me. It's the access to the properties on a very, very narrow, even negotiating in a car is quite difficult. It's on a blind bend over a large crest with a very obtruse angle into the actual estate, if you will. And I cannot imagine that that's not going to cause a great deal of problems. I've got my own business. We've had commercial properties over time, over the last 20 years, and access for HGVs and large commercial vehicles would almost be impossible, I would suggest. The other thing leading on from that is the actual land is very, very narrow, and how they would suggest that a commercial vehicle will be able to turn around on the premises. Again, I can't even understand how that's logistically possible, which would, I guess, entail if it isn't, and I'm correct in that, they would have to back out onto the main road, which again just seems ridiculous. So I think the main objection from what would be seen as an objection from sort of that aspect will be the traffic, the extra disturbance in that, and undoubtedly a lack of safety on that. I mean, I don't know how they could change it neither, because it is a very narrow road with residential properties on either side. It doesn't seem that will be something that you could change. Obviously extra noise and things like that. And again, being a business owner and having commercial properties, it is basically backed on both sides by residential properties. And that will cause a significant amount of, I mean, there is no obviously telling who these will be rented to. Obviously, it's a business at that point, and they will be looking to rent it to anybody who would rent it. But conducting a business or a commercial business or anything of that is going to create a significant amount of disturbance.
Thank you, Mr. McKenzie. We are going to have to wrap it up there because the 3
Thank
minutes
you.
is up. Thanks for your contribution.
Thanks for your time. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Councillor Bradley, can I invite you to make your representations?
Thank you, Chair, and hello, members of the committee. Obviously, this site straddles the border between Adlington and Heath Charnock, hence I'm speaking on Councillor Wilson for our respective wards. And as it details in paragraph 83, and as the officers highlighted previously, this application came through in late 2021, where I spoke previously against the previous application. This new application is not very different, it's 1 unit less, and therefore I would argue not substantially different than what you discussed and debated at the end of 2021 and refused. As it details in the report in paragraph 5, there is an existing permission in place for housing. This is a commercial proposal, as the last one was, that was refused. Residents' concerns are exactly the same as they were at the last application, and they're detailed in paragraph 10, and I don't wish to repeat those, but they are there for you to see, as are the objections from the 2 parish councils, from Adlington Town Council and Heath Charnock Parish Council in paragraphs 12 and 13, which again echo the same sentiments as residents have raised. And therefore I welcome the recommendation this time put forward by officers in paragraph 1 for the very good reasons stated therein, and I would hope that members can support those recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Wilson, can you hear us?
I can, Chair. Thank you very much.
Over to you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Again, I don't wish to repeat previous statements, but what I would say, Chair, is that members of the committee will be familiar with this application because, of course, they considered it in the past. As Councillor Bradley just said, there's only one difference, which is a property reduction of 1, which makes no difference, of course, to the fundamental reason why members objected last time, which was the loss of amenity, particularly in relation to the undue noise and disturbance that would be harmful to residents who currently live in the surrounding area, and that is contrary to the number of policies of the council, which is outlined again in the report. And as was said by Ian in the presentation, that loss of amenities is what we are considering this evening. It is what members considered last time and the reason why they refused. If there was some substantial change in the planning application, then that would warrant a review by members. But in my opinion, no such review is warranted, given the fact that we are looking at a very, very similar application and a very similar loss of amenity for neighbours who currently live in the area. And therefore, I hope that the committee will support the recommendation for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Right, Mr. Joint, would you like to make your contribution? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. This is a very confusing one, this. As the applicant, I don't want to live next door to an industrial estate. I don't know what's going on here, because I don't want HGVs going up and down in front of my house. I live on that street and I've got a lot of loyalty with my neighbours. And this, it's beyond me. This site, it's going to be manned by myself. There's going to be small businesses, for example. We've got an hairdressing academy. We've got a pet food supplies, plumbing supplies, a beautician, a finance company. All these companies are interested in these small commercial units. They're not industrial units. There's not going to be HGVs going up and down. It states quite clearly, I do not want heavy goods vehicles up and down in front of my house. This site will close at 7 o'clock in the evening. Each of the tenants will have a pass to get in and out. I'll be, not policing it is the wrong word, but I'll be managing it. It finishes at dinner time on a Saturday, and on Sunday it's closed. So I think, is that not better than residential, what's open at 24 hours a day, what cannot be banned? Cars can come up and down whenever they want. People are saying this is a fabulous idea, and the dwellings are absolutely beautiful. So it's beyond me why, you know, and I'm quite alarmed really, as Ian over there, last time this was came before your good selves, this was put forward for approval. Now there's one less dwelling. Now it's going to be, it closes on a Sunday and it finishes at dinner time on a Saturday. Everybody goes home at 7 o'clock. And so by the time you've watched Emmerdale Farm, everyone's gone home. So what's going on here? I'm sorry, but it is a little bit beyond me why it's basically been thrown out. And I'm just putting the cards on the table. I'm paying somebody a lot of money to sit here, but I think I need to just tell you guys how it is. And as you can tell, I'm not very good at this. With the access, you know, the Highways Department have accepted the scheme. It's cost thousands for this scheme to be introduced. Okay, there's got to be some major amendments to the access, major amendments. But at the end of the day, there's no HGVs going in and out of there. I will not allow it. Simple as that. So everybody's getting upset about nothing, including the parish church. It's been perhaps the first application was probably put across incorrectly by whoever I appointed to do it. I think you get my idea. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. I just want to say the officers are doing their job to the best of their ability, so please don't single them out like that. Adele, do you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of points of clarification, really. We are aware that officers recommended approval last time, and if members will recall the report, it was on balance in terms of the impacts from the likely comings and goings. Members took the opportunity to visit the site and ultimately refused that application. That is a matter of public record, and it is a material consideration in the way that officers have to assess any subsequent resubmission. It would be illogical to come to a different conclusion as officers than the committee had come to in actually making that decision. Hence, the recommendation from officers is different than what it was last time. So I just want to explain that. I think I am concerned a little bit further than the report will set out now, given the identified likely tenants. And I say that because the original application was for light industrial units, which members will be aware cover business premises that fall within a specific use class of the old use class of B1, rather than B2, where you've got general industrial uses. And this was a resubmission of that application. And it was a resubmission on the basis of a slight amendment, but still set of the same character and description. Hence, there was no subsequent fee paid in terms of the assessment of the application. What I've heard from the applicant this evening is actually the likely prospective tenants are activities that would be a town centre activity that would require a whole host of different assessment in terms of traffic generation and usage. For instance, a hairdressing academy is likely to generate a lot of students, a lot of prospective models who will sit there and have their hair cut by an untrained hairdresser. So those activities would not necessarily fall within a light industrial use and would need the submission of a separate application. So at this moment in time, the application before you is for light industrial units, and that's on the basis members must consider the application. But I would ask you to disregard the reference to the future tenants on the basis that that isn't part of the application, because that doesn't fall within the same character and description that is required under the planning regime, if you like, for a resubmitted application. That would need to be assessed separately and would need probably a sequential test, an assessment and an impact assessment in terms of how that would impact on existing centres. So please don't take that into account in terms of your voting, in terms of future likely occupiers. The recommendation is on the basis of what's before you, which is a slightly reduced scheme than last time, which members were minded to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adele. I just want to bring in Town's Legal Officer for some further clarification and advice. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo what's been said by Adele in terms of the actual application itself. It has to be determined on the application that's before you. And like Adele said, you should disregard the comments made by the applicant in respect of the prospective tenants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now that's clarified. So, members, it is over to you. Councillor Morwood.
Thank you, Chair. I think Adele has given very good advice there to the applicant should he decide to go again, as it were, because as has been pointed out, it's the application before us and the changes are not significant enough. The loss of amenity is still the same in terms of noise and so forth. So on this occasion, I'm happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. That's a proposal for officer recommendations, is it? Yes, thank you. Okay, I had Councillor Nevitt and then Councillor Gabbard.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a comment based on the advice we've just received from Adele. I perfectly understand wishing to disregard particular comments that might have been raised tonight. However, the exact same comments are in the planning pack that we've been given. So presumably they were acceptable to planning officers when that went to publish, but they're no longer acceptable. Are you suggesting that we should essentially erase those from the planning pack that we have in front of us, because that would constitute a separate planning application, and then therefore just work with the document that's around it? Or should, is there a point of clarity there? Because from what I can best tell, the applicant hasn't said any different in this meeting tonight than is published on paper here.
Through you, Chair. It's just a point of clarification. I think what the applicant has asserted is a possible range of tenants, and it was indicative at that point in time. And as far as I'm aware, there's been some concern about the range of uses, but it seems that it's not just a potential. It seems that these businesses are potentially lined up. So the point I'm making is the application for consideration is simply for light industrial.
Okay, Councillor Gabbard.
Thank you, Chair. My point, again, I seem to be repeating myself, is to echo Councillor Morwood's. Is having been at the last meeting, I was one of the people who voted to object against this proposed development. And again, dropping one thing, I don't see how that at all changes the opinion of this committee from last time. I'm surprised how quick it actually came back, to be honest. And I appreciate that the applicant has come back to speak to us today, but I would have appreciated if they perhaps looked at the last planning to see what the concerns were and then tried to address them, because dropping it by one almost to me seems like they're just trying to see what the limit is rather than meaningful consultation of what is deemed acceptable. So I would second the proposal.
Councillor Boardman.
I was one of those rare committee members at the last time it came up that supported the officer's recommendation. Thought it was the right recommendation then. I actually still think it's the right recommendation now. We look at every planning application on weight, and we always talk about this. What is the advantages and what are the disadvantages of a planning application? In front of us is one reason I can see here, and that's noise and disturbance with regards to the reason for refusal of this application. I would work on the other way of looking at it, and the advantages of having something which is a light industrial use, which we have a huge deficit of within this borough, small units. We know that because this council's building some. We need them. Businesses need places to work. Adlington used to be an incredibly built-up business enterprise centre back in the late 50s and 60s. Lots of those buildings have disappeared, and lots of those buildings have been demolished, and residential housing has been put up, Chair. What we're not seeing is those buildings coming back so that businesses can operate from those local centres. So I would flip this, and I would move to approve this application based on the fact that the weight that is required for the need for small, light commercial units within urban centres around Chorley town centre is critical and essential. And like the applicant says, you know, the site already has planning permission for residential properties. Does this committee really want to see this application come back again and have a line of bungalows all the way down the side of the train line? That's what you could possibly have. You know, it's got residential use. The noise, I'm just going to go back to that one. Has anyone forgotten this is right next to the main train line? Now, you're not telling me that train line doesn't create noise and disturbance. No one's complained or even mentioned that. So a few light vans, trucks, even deliveries coming down that lane, I can't see any issue whatsoever. So I'm going to move for officers to approve it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other members wish to contribute? Councillor Wheelton.
Thank you, Chair. I think I seconded Councillor Boardman's motion last time for approval, so I'll second it again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wheelton. Any other members wish to make a comment on this application before I move to the vote? I shall take that as a no. So I'm going to take the vote on the amendment first, which is to approve application against officer recommendations. So all those in favour of the amendment, please.
Sorry, Chair, could you just clarify, are we voting for that amendment, or are we voting for the amendment moved by Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. So that motion has not been carried. So we will now move to the officer recommendation, which is for planning permission to be refused. Thank you, Chair. So committee have decided to refuse planning permission for the reasons set out in the report in respect of land south of Mercer Court and east of Westhoughton Road, Adlington. Thank you, Chair.
To do so before I move on to section 4. Thank you. Okay, in that case, I move on to section 4, which is the appeals report. Adele is going to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just wait for the person to leave. Yeah, you'll note that there are a few new appeals, but of most important drilling to bring your attention to are the 3 appeal decisions that are detailed at Carrington Road and Parr Lane in particular, where the appeals have both been allowed. Again, as we discussed, you discussed earlier, these all hinged on the 5-year housing land supply, which basically concludes that the core strategy policy 4 is out of date, and that the standard methodology that's been introduced by government is the way that Chorley Council needs to calculate its 5-year housing land supply. And clearly that has significant impacts on the assessment of planning applications and our ability to actually defend the council's position for applications that are refused on that basis. I'd also bring your attention to the application at 12 Langton Close, and you know, I can't resist an opportunity to make you aware that this application was refused contrary to officer recommendation and has been allowed on appeal. That's all I want to say on that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wish to make any comment on the appeals report? No, in that case, point 5, any urgent business agreed with the Chair? There's been no urgent business, so I would like to thank all the officers, the planning officers, democratic services, the public speakers and members, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.